speaker, Kevin Dunn, especially since he set up all this wonderful work there. So, are we good?
Yes.
Okay, so, Kevin has given me this wonderful bio of himself, and that I would like to share with all of you.
Amen.
Kevin is he so honorably said that he would be our guest speaker today, and I'm so thankful that he said that he would come and represent Black History Month for us here at Abbey. Dunn's puzzles are designed for the enjoyment of the whole family. I wanted the puzzles to promote family conversation, explained Dunn. So if a child didn't know the answer, he could go to his parents or his grandparents to find out what the answer was. Now the small company owner of Invision Publications, Dunn designs a series of word puzzles in various formats, books, cards, and hardcover pamphlets, which you will see today. They are amazing. Dunn, whose puzzles are often found in New York City schools, they were in my school and my children enjoyed them tremendously, collaborates with the American Liberties Union, where he's developing a puzzle on racial profiling, which is pretty, very, very timely,
Wow.
and the Apollo Theater. Also a poet, Dunn sprinkles his word search books and crossword collections with lyrics and observations on life. The Bronx entrepreneur is currently working on a new In Search of Yourself word search puzzle series entirely dedicated to teens, issues of dating, peer pressure, anger management, and self-image. The book will be released later this year. So let's give Kevin Dunn a warm round of applause. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your expertise with us.
Well, thank you so much.
Kevin.
Can I keep that? Like, as you read, it's funny when you sit down and and people are talking about you, and you're present. I just need to start by saying, thanks, Ebony, for inviting me, having me here. Dr. Sheila Bobo, Dr. Nimmons, Dr. Mabel Robertson. I've had a chance to meet these women over the years and, build relationships. And, I believe, what we do as a community, as Black folks, is all about relationships. All the stuff that Dr. Nimmons read in this article, which was from Bronx Family Magazine, it would be great for me to just take credit, but how they say it takes a village, I stand on the shoulders of so many. So many. I was listening to the stories, of everybody as you were sharing, and that's Black history. It's a sharing, it's a community, it's being together, it's learning from each other, it's embracing one another, honoring the best in ourselves. And that's what I do with my Puzzles for a Series. I tell our stories, because most of the time we don't know. Because we get sound bites, we get bits and pieces, never the full story. And that's done deliberately, it's done intentionally. I mean, because, as, most of you said and pointed out, it's about power. And I like the story where, I forgot who said, I think the gentleman here, about, or was it Michael Hooper, on the slave ship, when they looked in our face and they said, no matter what we do, excuse me, the young woman here, the one with you, from Mount Vernon, I believe, the Bronx, okay. Yeah, where she said that no matter what they did to us or tried to do to us, that we, like Angela Miles said, and still we rose, and still, that was frightening people. I mean, that would scare me. I mean, because as a kid, I'm ashamed to say it now, I was like kind of a bully, so if you were a little smaller than me, or I felt I could like best you, then okay, I was going to like do you some kind of way. I mean, it wasn't the right thing, but this is things that kids do, but imagine me like picking on somebody and, each time I pick on them, they came back stronger than ever. I mean, that would be enough to make me stop in my tracks and say, well, hold up here. You know what? This ain't the one to be picking on. But it really, and then it also says that if I continue to pick on somebody, it says something about me too. What's going on inside me, as a person, as a being, that's causing me to kind of like single you out and feel that in order for me to stand tall, I have to put you down. So that's really speaking to the psychology. So, I'm going to talk, just a little bit because we don't have a lot of time, But the thing is about self-value, self-worth, which I've heard, you know, some of the folks here mention, is about not allowing others to define who we are as a people. And for so long, we've done that. You know, and you know, consciously or unconsciously, we use other folks as a standard. You know, and you know, some of us still do it. You know, in other words, when we think about people that's intelligent and smart and, you know, savvy and so on and so forth, a lot of times, unfortunately, it's not people that look like us. You know, I mean, you know, so, you know, I mean, we say these things, but, you know, I have to, how they say, the young folks keeping it real, you know, because we've been programmed, we've been conditioned. Yeah. You know, how they said to believe that, you know, the other person's ice is colder than ours, you know, but, you know, we have such a rich history, you know, and doing research for the point, because, you know, I have to tell folks this, look, this is a disclaimer. I didn't start out knowing all this stuff. You know, I learned a lot of this along the way. But I will share a story with you, because I grew up not far from here in Do or Die, Bed-Stuy. You know, Myrtle Avenue, you know, is what, you know, it's Marcus Garvey Boulevard now, but what was it? It was Sumner Avenue. Sumner Avenue back in the days, and that's where I grew up, you know. But one of the things I was fortunate, as a kid, I liked comic books. I love comic books. And one day there was a store on Broadway, you know, it was an old beat up like newsstand. And he sold comic books. He had, you know, you walk in the store with piles and piles of comic books. One day I went in the store, you know, my favorite was like Flash and so on and so forth. I walked in the store one day and he had a comic book called Golden Legacy. I don't know how many of you remember this series. And it's still around now. I'm going to tell you the story about the gentleman who created this series. There were 16, this is Toussaint, I heard the young man say Toussaint L'Ouverture, that's right. That's the first time I ever heard of Toussaint L'Ouverture, you know, who led the Haitian Revolution that overthrew France, kicked France out of Haiti. He wrote this in 1966. So as a young man growing up, imagine my surprise, you know, and my delight when I walked into that comic book store, think I'm going to get my regular stuff, and I found this. And boy, oh boy, I can tell you, this was a life changer for me. Because what it did, it planted a seed. It didn't change me overnight, but it was enough to whet my appetite. You know, so every week I would go back and I would ask the guy, I said, well, you got more of those? You know, and little by little I found other ones. You know, the same gentleman that did this series, he did, you know, the Black Inventors, he did Black Cowboys. There were 16 altogether. But that's how I got to start. So that's why I say, you know, I stand there today, stand on the shoulders of those that came before me. So listen to this. When Dr. Nimmons invited me to come, you know, say a few words about Black History Month, and I said, okay, well, what am I going to talk about? And I said, well, a little bit part of what I want to talk about is like how I got started, what inspired me, you know, as a youngster. You know, this is one of the things. So I said, well, let me go online, since we have internet as a resource, and see if I can find if they have any more left. I found a gentleman, his name is Bertram Fitzgerald. He's still alive, he's 81 years old, he lives up in Yonkers. I called him the other day, we was on the phone for about an hour, you know, a whole hour, you know, and it's just amazing. The guy, he started telling me his story. And the thing that really stood out, he said he grew up in Harlem, in the Harlem River houses. And the thing that stood out, he had a teacher. Now, a lot of you here, some of you are still active, current educators, some of you are retired. He had a teacher. He said he was pretty smart, pretty bright, but he had transferred schools. And the school he went to, he said was kind of, he used the word unruly. He said they were unruly. You know, we used to say rowdy. They were rowdy, they carry on, they were just acting up. But he said his teacher, he said, you know what, I'm going to just teach what I want to teach. He said, look, I can't get the attention. He said, you know what, I'm just going to, like, you know, throw that out. He said, I'm going to teach what I want to teach. He taught them about Black history. And so it was his teacher that gave him the idea, that first, like, whet his appetite to learn more about himself, about Black history. And that eventually led to him creating this series. So you see how important it is that, you know, how they say each one teach one, yes. And that it really is about family, you know, and see, we don't come from a people that discard anyone, you know. I have my mom, she's 93 years old, and she lives with me, wow. You know, and I am so honored. And I'm going to tell you why, you know, I'm grateful that she's still alive, but the reason why I'm so honored, because over the years I've learned, like as a youngster, you know, my mom, she was very secretive. You know, I mean, we would have to like twist our arms to get information. We used to tease her. We said, well, look, you work for a spy agency or something like that? Why everything's such a big secret? But I found out later on, my grandparents were from Cuba. And then as a youngster growing up here in Brooklyn in the 60s, you know, with the Cuban Revolution and Castro and so on and so forth, and people saying, well, if they thought you would come from Cuba, you were communist, and they labeled you and this and that. So she was kind of like laying low. You know, and I remember I used to tell my friends, I said, yeah, my mom, she was born in Cuba. And she would say, like, why you see, you know how, like, they shake you up. Well, don't be telling people, like, I'm from Cuba, you know. And she spoke Spanish, but she didn't teach it to us. But here's the thing. A few years ago, we were commemorating her 80th birthday. You know, so my nephew, who also lives in Brooklyn, we said, well, let's do a big family reunion and let's videotape her. While we were talking, come to find out, her mother was a nurse with Marcus Garvey. Wow. And she started telling us the story about how, as a youngster, as a little girl, you know, her moms would take her to Marcus Garvey's meetings on it was 138th Street up in Harlem. When Marcus Garvey first came to New York, there's a place, and the building is still there, you know, and her mother would drag her to the meetings, you know, and her mother was a nurse. We never knew this as youngsters, you know. So hearing that, I said, wow, look at that. You know, the history is right in the family. So I'm sharing that story because right here among us, there's a lot of history. So that's why we got to talk to each other. We got to tell our stories and share our stories before we leave this planet, you know. And we have a rich history. And it's not just what happened a long time ago, just what happened in Africa, you know. I mean, that's a part of the story that definitely needs to be told, but it's about what's happening now. Because there's so many of us that's doing some wonderful stuff. I mean, that's still alive. You know, and I'm going to share a few of those with you. One thing, you know, in doing research, you know, for the Puzzles for a series, you know, every year, Black History Month, you know, which started with Carter G. Woodson as Negro History Week, and then they expanded, you know. But here's the thing. You know, when other folks tell our story, you know, they trivialize it. You know, we have a rich history, and how, you know, a few other folks were saying, it's every day, it's all year round, all day long. You know, we're making history, we're living history. So that being the case, you know, Black History Month, you know, we get the same sound bites. You know, I go into a lot of the schools, and you know, Dr. Martin Luther King, he's an icon, but unfortunately, a lot of young people, they tired of hearing about him. You know, and really, and you know, and the reason why is because they hear the same thing. He had a dream. You know, I had young people, they said, yeah. I said, well, who was Dr. King? They said, oh, he freed the slaves. You know, because they really don't know. They really don't know. And they go on by the hearsay, what they heard, you know. So here's the thing. When I go into schools and we talk about Dr. King, I don't start with like him having a dream. I talk about him as a teenager. Yeah. You know, when he was 12 years old, he lost his grandmother. He got very depressed, because him and his grandmother was close, were very close. As he got depressed, the same way typical teenagers get depressed. So he started acting out as a teenager. When they hear that, they perk up. They say, now I'm humanizing Dr. King. I'm saying, okay, the man that he eventually became, he didn't necessarily start out that way, but he had good people in his life. He had mentors in life that helped to pull him up, even when he started acting out, you know. At 15 years old, okay, he left high school, he went to college, and he became a pastor when he was 20. But along the way, he shot pool. He loved to dance. Occasionally, he drank beer. You know, like, you know, I mean, you know, so I'm just saying, he was a real person. Real issues, real stuff. He dated. He had a girlfriend, you know. But see, and the reason why I share those stories, because when youngsters hear those kind of stories, they say, wow, he had a girlfriend. But I said, now, you think his girlfriend would have, you know, if Dr. King would have been like walking with his pants down to his knee, you know, what you think his girlfriend, what you think is how his girlfriend would have felt? Let's have that kind of conversation. Now, I'm not judging you if you got your pants down, but let's think about it. You know, so sometimes it's the people that you're closest to that really pulls you up. I know as a youngster, as a teenager, if I had a crush on a girl had a crush on me, and she said, pull your pants up, guess what? I'm pulling my pants up, you know, because I had a crush. So sometimes that's how it works. That's really how it works. You know, that's right. You know, and you know, so yeah, so those are stories, but then to put it in context, you know, same thing with Rosa Parks. We hear a lot about Rosa Parks, but do you know the inspiration for her not giving up her seat came from a 15-year-old teenage girl named Claudette Colvin? You know, Claudette Colvin. And the thing is, she was 15 years old. She got on the bus, Montgomery, Alabama, in the same year, 1955, in March. Now, Rosa Parks, she refused to give up a seat, in December. Now, this 15-year-old girl got on the bus, and the rule was if you got on the bus and it was empty, you could basically sit where you wanted to sit. But if it got crowded and then white people can't get on the bus, you had to get up and move to the back. So that day, when she left school, she was a high school student. She was in the 9th grade. You know, what grade you in? Ninth grade, look at that. So this could be Claudette Colvin right here. She was in the ninth grade. She was 15 years old. You 15? 14? 16? 13? Okay, well, you almost there, almost 15. You a teenager. So she was, 15 years old. She got on the bus that day. When they got on, when the bus driver said that she had to move, she said, I ain't moving. Now, her girlfriend was sitting there next to her. Her girlfriend, like get up and, jetted to the back. But Claudia said, I'm not getting up. And the reason why, because, again, her teachers, she had two teachers. One teacher was named Miss Nesbitt, and I can't recall the other teacher, two African-American female teachers, that instilled in their students that you have a rich history and a rich heritage, and that you have to be proud of who you are. So when she left school that day, and they have been drilling this into the kids, all year long. All year long, telling them about their history, teaching them that you have a rich history, so on. So guess what? When she got on the bus that day, and they tried to tell her, you got to move, she said, I'm not having it. So she refused to get up. And this was in 1955, a 15-year-old girl. But now here's the thing. When she went back to school, she got arrested. She went back to school, and you would think, everybody said, yeah, Claudette, this and that. People, the parents had told their kids, stay away from that girl. She a troublemaker. Don't, because they were terrified. Because for the most part, white folks in that city, in that town, had folks scared to death. Scared to death. Everybody, and here's the other piece, we talk about Dr. King now when it's safe. When he was alive and he was going into a lot of those towns, a lot of those counties, it wasn't all that safe. It took a lot of courage, and a lot of black folks, they were afraid because they said, well, if you come in and you start stirring up stuff, when you leave, white folks, they're going to take it out on us. So everybody wasn't really loving them and feeling them that way, the way we claim now. So that's why, we have to tell the whole story and tell it. Because it did take a lot of courage, for him to do what he do, and then for Claudette to do what she did. And here's the thing. The case that desegregated the buses in Montgomery, Alabama, is not Rosa Parks' name that's on that case. It's Claudette Colvin. And if you're interested, you'll get a chance to meet her next month in March. She's going to be the guest speaker for the NAACP chapter in the Bronx. And before you leave, if you give us your contact information, I'll make sure I email it to you, the exact date and the location where she's going to be. And you'll get a chance to meet her. Because she's still alive. You actually go on YouTube. There's a speech that she gave, I think in 2010, where she talks about, the things that inspire her to not give up her seat. So that's just some of the stuff. So if you don't remember anything else, Claudette Colvin. And so I use that because I talk about people standing up for what they believe in. So I like to say, it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are, to stand up for what you believe in. You could be 13 years old or you could be 95 years old, like another woman who's still alive. Her name is Dr. Olivia Hooker. Some of you may know her from the Black Wall Street. She also, and see, the thing that's so amazing, a lot of these folks live here either in New York or right on the immediate outskirts. There's a wonderful, and see, I'm sharing, some people, they ask me, they say, well, look, you got puzzle books. Why are you sharing other people's stuff? Because it's about sharing information. What I do, is connect people to information and resources that at the end of the day is going to empower you. Knowledge empowers you. You need to know this stuff because there's a plan afoot, to keep you from knowing who you really are. Because when you know who you really are, it's like how folks were saying, you're blessed. And see, folks can't just dismiss it as feel-good information. No, we have a rich living history that's, alive, is living, is organic. We make history every day. In the few minutes I have left, I'm going to share some amazing stuff right here in Brooklyn, that's happening. But before I continue, Dr. Olivia Hooker, she's about 99 years old now. Dr. Olivia Hooker. She was 6 years old in 1921. Some of you have heard of Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they burned the city down. Booming, thriving town. Booming, thriving town. Google it. Google Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'll share just a little bit. They had their own banks. Now, these are black folks. Had their own banks, had their own bus line, had their own hotels, movie theaters, cleaners, grocery stores, supermarkets. Their own clubs. A town of over 10,000 strong. They were thriving. Millionaires. At that time, people like Booker T. Washington, Madam C.J. Walker, they would come. All the jazz musicians, Duke Ellington, all of them, they would come to Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street. That's how like booming it was. It was like the Harlem, you know, of Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know, that was the place. You know, the whites that live in the surrounding county, they were jealous. They were jealous. They said like, you uppity folks, who you think you are? You know, because what it was in that town, folks were self-reliant. They didn't have to go outside their town to get groceries. They didn't have to. If I needed something clean, I just went down the block. You know, if a family came in from somewhere else and needed some place to stay, they stayed in the local hotel, which is owned by somebody black. If I got sick, I went to the local black doctor. You know, so the infrastructure was in place. You know, it was all there. Dr. Olivia Hooker, she was 6 years old at the time. When the whites came in, they accused a young black man of attempting to rape a white woman on the elevator. You know, the story turned out to be false, but they hyped it up. You know, and the whites, you know, vigilantes, the KKK, the state troopers, you know, the state police, they all came in and they burnt the town literally to the ground. And Dr. Hooker, when you hear her story, you know, you could go, there's some clips of her on YouTube. You know, she before Gil Noble passed on Like It Is, he had her on his program. And she talked about, as a 6-year-old girl, how her mother and parents had to hide her under the bed. And then the whites, when they came in, how they were, she said they were so vicious that I think they chopped off the head of her doll and burned her doll clothes. She said they were just vicious. And she said the thing was, what they really was doing, they were stealing. You know, after they burned the town down, they was burning, they were coming, they were looting a lot of those places. And the sad thing about it is that after, you know, all of the blacks that were property owners lost their property, they couldn't file no insurance claim. The insurance companies wouldn't honor them. So that's why the town never was really able to rebuild itself. But I share that story because Dr. Olivia Hooker, she's still alive. And she lives right up here, like in White Plains. You know, a couple of years ago, she spoke at the Association of Black Social Workers. So, I mean, she doesn't get out as much anymore, but she's still alive. So this is living history that's still with us, Dr. Olivia Hooker. And another thing about Dr. Hooker, she was the first African-American female to serve in the United States Coast Guard. Coast Guard, United States Coast Guard. Right? So Dr. Olivia Hooker, I mean, there's a lot of history. I mean, and there's a lot more. So, but, you know, right here in Brooklyn, I don't know, some of you may have heard, there's a film called Brooklyn Castle. And it's about the chess club from, what's the school, I think PS 256, where they won the most chess championships, like, in the whole country. And there was 3, you know, young African-American boys that became, like, chess masters, you know. So a lot of times we see images of our young men doing, you know, so-called all this outrageous stuff. We got a lot of young people that's doing some really great stuff. You know, 3 young chess masters. And it's not easy becoming a chess master. You know, and they 13 years old. I forgot to mention that. They 13. One, I think, Justice Williams. Another one is James Black. And there's a third one, I can't recall his name. But, you know, along with that, there's a young woman. Her name, she's about 17 now. Her name is Rochelle Ballantyne. Some of you, you know, may have heard of her. She went to school right here in Brooklyn. She goes to Brooklyn Tech now. She's in line to become the first African-American female grandmaster. You know, amazing. But, you know, but there's young people that's just doing some amazing stuff. Like this young woman here, but here's a picture of Rochelle Ballantyne here. You know, now on top is a picture of a 7-year-old girl from Philadelphia. Her name is Zora Ball. She's been hailed as the world's youngest mobile phone video game programmer. You know, yeah. And you know, of course, they said, no, she got to be perpetrating. So they put it to the test. There was a convention, you know, a programming convention about 2 years ago. And she was there. And so they said, well, maybe your brother, you know, was doing the programming. And so they gave her a program. They said, well, here, create it on the spot. And she created the program on the spot. You know, brilliant young woman, you know. And see, sometimes we need to know, see, this is typical. This is not the exception of our young folk, because we're people of genius. We're people, somebody else used the word creativity. We're very creative. We're very resourceful, you know, and very imaginative. You know, a lot of times, you know, like how they took arts out of school, or, you know, or have limited funds for art. So a lot of times, you know, so we don't have like opportunities as much, but we are very artistic people, and it expresses itself in so many different ways. And that's why a lot of times when folks come into our communities and try to deal with our young folks, they don't know how. You know, see, because, you know, there's no one way to learn. You know, there's no one size fit all, you know, for education, that we have different learning styles, you know, and a lot of times people come in with the idea that we need fixing, that there's something wrong with us, you know, and they look at our young people that, yeah, well, we've heard about you. You know, you're broken, you're damaged, So I'm here to kind of like save you from you. That's not the mindset we need. You know, when I look at a young person, just like when I look at someone like myself, you know, I see beauty, I see excellence, you know, I see achievement, I see unlimited possibility. I don't see somebody that's broken or that's damaged or somehow that needs, you know, to be fixed. But see, again, that really speaks to the whole idea of value. You know, we have to learn more how to value who we are, you know, and to value the diversity in who we are as well. You know, because, you know, that's part of our rich heritage too. I mean, we come from different places by way of, you know, different routes, you know, but we're here now. So, you know, a couple other things and then I'll wind up. You know, we've all heard of Madam C.J. Walker, you know, entrepreneur extraordinaire, first self-made, you know, woman millionaire in the United States. But, you know, we think about her like 1900, 1908, 1909, and so on and so forth. Okay. But how many people know that, you know, her products are still around? Actually, I have some with me. You know, this is Madam C.J. Walker here in Scout Preparation. This is the original formula. I'm going to pass it around now, but now let me, look, I know how much I got in here. I know how much I got in here, like, and I know how your hair look. That's right. And this is a super grow formula. So I know how much hair you had when you came in. So like, if you leave me here, you got hair down to here. I know you've been dipping in my formula. But I'm going to pass one this way. And when this is the original formula, you know, and you know what the thing is, a couple years ago, I was at a Black History Showcase convention in Philadelphia. You know, I had my table set up, selling, you know, my books and stuff. And right next to me was the folks selling Madam C.J. Walker products. Come to find out, a gentleman by the name of Raymond Randolph, he brought up all the shares in the Madam C.J. Walker company, you know, and so what he did, he wanted to keep the company alive, you know, to kind of like bring it back. And so they still use a lot of her original formulas and they're coming up with other formulations, you know, but it's just amazing because her story is an amazing story. I mean, for her, you know, she was what they call a social entrepreneur. Her thing wasn't just to make money, but it was to make money and give it back and to create opportunities for other people to make money too. You know, so she gave back. She donated to a lot of causes. I mean, to a lot of institutions, a lot of organizations. I mean, she, you know, like she walked the talk. I mean, she made money, but she knew that there was enough to spread the wealth around. You know, and she mandated that, look, if you come work for me, that you had to learn about here. It wasn't just about selling a product. So she established a college that she sent with her people, you know, that worked for it. They were called Walker agents. You know, so when they went into your home, you know, they were going to give you an education about how to maintain your hair. It wasn't so much, there's a lot of misconception that was about just straightening your hair. No, it was about growing your hair, you know. And so she set up a college to teach, you know, about entrepreneurship, you know, which was amazing because we're talking about over 100 years ago. She had over 3,000 people working for her over 100 years ago. I mean, so that's amazing. So if she could do that then, imagine, you know, the kind of stuff we could do now, which brings up another point. There's a gentleman by the name of George Frazier. He's a networking guy. You know, he does a lot of networking. He does a lot of these power networking conferences. But one of the things he likes to say, he said education for the 21st century is not just about getting a good education and getting a degree. It's about getting a good education and creating a job. You know, you create a job because education is to empower. Yes. You know, it empowers you. You know, and so that's why, like, I do what I do, you know, because it allows me to be empowered. It allows me to take ownership of my life. You know, I mean, before I started doing this, I was a database programmer. That's my background. You know, I was a little crazy kid, even crazier teenager. I used to get in trouble. Don't get me wrong. So it wasn't like a straight and narrow the whole journey. You know, I zigzagged and went up and down and, like, you know, it took some detours along the way. But eventually, you know, I got back on track. And that's why, you know, like when it comes to our young people, don't be too hard on them. You know, they may be a little bit, you know, bouncing off the walls now, but remember, you know, a lot of us bounce off the walls too, you know, but the good thing about it, there was someone there to kind of pull us back, you know, and if I didn't hear from you, then there was somebody else in the community that, you know, had my ear, and I got it from, and eventually those seeds that was planted came back, So, and that's why, so when I started the Puzzle for a series, it's really like to share information, to connect people to information resources that empower us. Like the gentleman that's doing the videotaping, Joe Green, like one of my partners, a good friend of mine, he has an after-school program. His mission is the same, going into these schools, going into our community, empowering folks. But what I like is because he looks like us, because he is us, And the thing about the same thing with Taisha, she's a social worker. Yes. She works with a lot of young people, but she's lived through a lot of stuff too. So, when she tells her story, or when young people come to her talking about what their issues and problems is, she can relate, she can identify, there's empathy there, because, and it's important that you see people in your community doing these things, So somebody else was saying, about like part of being black is black love and supporting each other, supporting each other. My next, you heard it here. I'm giving it away. I'm tipping my hand, so nobody don't run out here with my idea. We talk a lot about Harriet Tubman. When Harriet Tubman escapes, again, New York State, she lived right up here in Auburn, New York, when she escaped to freedom. They have a home. Her home is still up here in Auburn, New York. But here's the thing is, when she gained her physical freedom, economically, she still struggled. A lot of times she had to borrow money, there were people, that knew who she was that would lend her money and stuff just for her to survive. That shouldn't be the case. In 2014, that shouldn't be the case. So my next book is going to be called Harriet Tubman and the New the New Underground Railroad, because the Underground Railroad then was, physically the escape to freedom, physical freedom. Financially and economically, we're still enslaved. Now, that's a hard pill to swallow, but economically and financially, we're still enslaved because folks did a number on us. They really did, And see, I think the thing, we need to really understand, it was deliberate. It wasn't like, just it happened to work out that way. The enslavement process was big business. A lot of us, in one of my books, the one for teenagers, which was my most recent book, The African Burial Ground. I talk about, this is called Piecing It Together, word search puzzles for teenagers and other folks too. The other folks could be anybody, a teenager, a younger person. But there's a puzzle in here that talks about, the African Burial Ground, but it talks about Wall Street. A lot of people, we say things, 60 Wall Street. The address, 60 Wall Street was the address, the largest slave trading center in the whole United States outside the South was in Wall Street at 60 Wall Street. Now I'm saying this, there's a book called Black Legacy. See, I'm going to give you the source because I want you to know. There's a book called Black Legacy by William Loren Katz. He's the same author that wrote Black Cowboys, Black Indians. He has a book called Black Legacy. And there's in other places too. Look it up. 60 Wall Street was the largest slave trading center outside the South. There's another book called Complicity. How the North benefited, conspired, and I forget there's a third word, in slavery. And this book shows how the North was knee-deep in slavery. See, that's why it's important we know our story, because we've been told that the South was like, they were the pro-slavery bad guys, and the North was the anti-slavery good guys. That's not the case. The North had more investment in slavery than the South did. The ships that were being built, that transported, that captured Africans, the enslaved folks. A lot of the industries, the textile industries that manufactured clothes and stuff, were in New York, in Boston, were right up here in the North. The book, Complicity, is another excellent resource, But all this stuff is in the puzzle books, because I know a lot of folks are not going to pick up those books, which is sometimes unfortunate. So that's why I put it in the puzzle books, because as you're doing the puzzle, you're learning about the history. You're getting the history and the stories. The other puzzle book is In Search of Yourself. There's a picture in here of an early draft of the Statue of Liberty.